Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Demand Gen Chat. I'm your host, Kaylee Edmondson, and today we are joined with Craig Handy, who has a very long title, but is the head of post sales slash evolution slash RevOps over at Shopify. So thanks for joining us.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So I feel like you have to start with your title
Yeah.
and kind of set the stage for how things are positioned or orged over at Shopify and kind of like what your layer of ownership oversees.
So Shopify went through a reorganization in say December of 2020, and the intention of this was, we had a bunch of different products, a bunch of different approaches to go about selling it, and then kind of each product had their own go-to-market teams and their own full functions. And the thought was that that's not serving our merchants, our customers in the best way that we could, because it was disjointed in the way that we interacted with them. So the decision was made to
Mhm.
let's rethink this all together in a way that actually fits better than we can, put crafts together, put, solutions together and put the way that we communicate better. So what that ended up forming was what we call our global rev tech and ops uh, division. And it's the focus then is all the technology, all the tooling, many of the processes, and how we align that with the people and data to achieve the objectives. And I kind of see that as, Shopify has this thing of being merchant obsessed, and we can talk over that, but that's, we live by that. And I love that. But one of the things too was, well, how do we be merchant obsessed, or how do we help the team be merchant obsessed? Well, that was, we need to provide every single person that interacts with the merchants, or systems that the merchants interact with to communicate with us, has to be smooth, has to be clean. So that's really what the team that my team focuses on is building that out. When we first did this, we formed it into two groups: foundations and evolutions. Foundation was supposed to be like the main roadmap of work we were going to do, the day-to-day kind of medium-term focus. And I had the evolutions team, and this was focused on either like immediate short-term, as in we need something, it's going to take a couple months to do, but like we still need it right now. So what crazy thing can we come up to just bridge that gap overnight? But the main part was we were looking extreme long-term. We were trying to see 1, 2, 3, 4 years out. Were we doing things that were going to be like, I don't want to be an early adopter. I want to be an innovator. I don't want to wait for technology to advance. I want to go out to businesses, out to companies, work with them to craft better solutions, and give kind of the same way Shopify says arming the rebels. Like, well, why not? Let's arm the rebels in the rev tech space and kind of go out there and get that. So that was the passion. But we changed a little bit again recently, and we changed because uh, it was very separate. It was a lot to kind of put on two different groups,
Mhm.
especially in the groups we're building. So we then now broke into a more traditional system, which is pre-sales and post-sales. So we're still running the evolutions. I'm still doing that as a group, but now we're responsible for post-sale RevTech, which is an awesome space now where you watch that bridge between, I think some would refer to it as cross-sell, upsell. I like to call it coverage, but it's like, how do we take the merchants that we've acquired and connect them with the next best thing for them to advance their business and invest in their business and grow. So that's how we get that 100-year company and what we focus on.
Yeah, you said so many interesting things just in your definition of what you're owning or what your area of responsibility is. But one of the things I think that stands out most is um, looking not only like 6 months or a year ahead, but 4 years down the road at such a massive company. What are some of the things that go into like your day to day or like your even your quarterly planning where you're thinking like, okay, what does 2025 look like?
Yeah, so it's funny because it's like, you're trying to predict the future in a way, but ultimately, so someone early on in my career was telling me about, open as many doors as you can, not because you need to go through every single one of them, but open every door and kind of see what's out there. So for us, what I tell
Mhm.
my team is, take every phone call, which I mean, I maybe I shouldn't say that out in a public space, but if someone's pitching you software, like go and see it, see why they're doing there, why do they exist, why do they feel that there's a need for this, what other companies are engaging in this type of thing. Now, in the Shopify perspective, though, for us planning for our future, we have pretty solid goals leading up to the next few years, and Shopify has been very good at kind of setting those really strong North Stars and those lofty objectives. So we kind of align where the fact of is we realize to hit those objectives, well, we need more people. Hit those objectives, we need to identify more opportunities. To hit those objectives, we need to, make the merchant base that we have feel like Shopify is there for them, have the back. And so when I look at that, I try and find ways to get us closer to the merchants. I try and find ways for us to speed up or remove redundancies. I try and find ways to say also, is the way that humans are choosing to interact, is that evolving? Is that changing? So of course, global pandemic changes the way that some people want to interact. And then we look at, well, for coming out of this, and when we come out of this, what is that going to change? Are we going to have a roaring 20s where people want those in-person events and we want to actually send, more of those human interactions? Or have we shifted to, kind of radical digitization of how we interact? So then kind of thinking about that. So, but a lot of it, we never lose sight of the merchant, or in this case, from my regard, is the human, because without them, what are we doing? Right. So that's always, how do the humans feel and act and change and different, and how does that society change? And we just reflect the technology to fit that.
Yeah, no, and I think that's interesting too. And even your concept around leaving doors open, or at least opening them in the first place, is interesting, because it's like, especially for us right now, from a demand gen standpoint, we are also trying to predict the market. And this is obviously my first time in my career where I'm trying to predict the market against, the pandemic. I've never been up against anything like this. And so we're even just trying to make decisions around in-person events, and things of that nature. And it's like, how do you plan for both outcomes? And so this is even, our first scenario where we as a team are trying to come together to have a true formalized plan A and a plan B in
Mhm.
conjunction, so that,
Mhm.
if things changed very quickly or whatever, we would have a good backup plan in place. I think people always talk about it, but executing two plans at once that are polar opposite from one another is quite different from at least the way that in startup world, like, we are used to operating. So it's an interesting muscle to flex, and interesting to flex it 4 years in advance too.
Indeed, indeed. No, no, it is. And actually, on that note too, about the events, I joke around, but one of my business partners, he and I could be complete polar opposites in that same regard, where I'm kind of like, I don't really want to travel everywhere right now. Like, I'm totally cool with virtual events. He's
Mhm.
like, lick the floor at the airport comfortable. And so I'm kind of like, all right, like, you and I are very different, but in the case for him is like, he's itching to go to in-person events immediately, wants to get there. And so in
Mhm.
that essence, is both of us are buyers. Both of us are engaged in that market. So you kind of have to say, like, are you going to do two things so, or are you going to do things really well? But does that exclude those communities? And I know Chili Piper is obviously huge on community building, which is, again, one of the reasons I love you guys. But that scenario is you now have people that are going to go there. And can you create that experience virtually for the ones that are not ready to do that? So it's a tough job. So I
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
envy you
yeah.
on that.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough, but it's also really exciting. I think it's like a huge challenge ahead of, like, not just us, but obviously every marketer, um, all around the globe right now is kind of facing the same thing, which I think is also very unique, because normally we aren't all facing a very similar challenge at the same time.
Mhm.
And so it's very interesting to see how companies are reacting. And I think for us, yeah, inclusion, because even us as a company, right, we're trying to plan a company offsite right now. We normally do that once a year. Obviously, last year we did not get together. That was the first time in Chili Pepper's existence that we didn't get together. So we were trying to do something for this October, and it's like, okay, well, now the Delta variant is a thing. Things are kind of changing. We're trying to gauge the perception internally of, like, how people feel and their comfortability level. I don't know that we have anybody that's quite ready to lick the floor at the airport. However, we do have a lot of differing comfort levels internally. And so we're trying to, um, you know, provide good experiences for even ourselves, and then trying to figure out ways that we can also emote that in our go to market activities, to the public as well. So I think it's
Mhm.
just super interesting, and we're still figuring it out. So when we do, we'll share it with everybody. But yeah, it's super interesting, and yeah, especially at scale, right? Somebody for working for a company as large as Shopify, it's just interesting to hear how you guys are kind of adapting that mentality as well. Um, so let's talk about culture for a second at a company. Like, I don't even understand, how large is Shopify today, and how large was it, I guess, when you joined? Like, what does your growth look like?
Geez, I don't even know what I'm allowed to say or not,
Oh,
but
okay. Skip
let's
over
say a
it if you
lot.
don't.
There's a lot of people there. So,
Okay.
yeah, it's doubled since I joined, and I joined in 2019.
And with that evolving door, how do y'all maintain this culture and this mindset of like merchant obsessed at such magnitude and such
Mm.
scale?
Yeah, that is the question. Because you kind of wonder too, when you bring people in from different perspectives, is that like, what does that do to
Mhm.
the existing culture? And I would say, like, from when I joined Shopify, it feels a little different. Um, and that, granted, it constantly will. But what I think is, if you take it in two different levels, like Shopify has a bunch of rules, and well, rules are not really the right term, principles, let's say. And like, for example, one of them is don't be an asshole, right?
I
And
love that. You
one
should
of
make
them's
a
thrive on
t-shirt.
change.
Do y'all have a
Yeah,
t-shirt?
honestly, a t-shirt. Yeah, yeah. One of them's thrive on change. And so things like that at that base level, it's like, we're not telling you what the culture is or anything, but like, if you follow these basic concepts of what we're going to do, then the feel will stay the same, despite the fact that people are coming from different perspectives. But as far as culture building, I think Shopify has really started to grasp this. And it's something that when I build a team, I do the same thing, is the obsession of intersectionality with, not only race, creed, beliefs, but also experience and skill set and network and location. And that creates this scenario where, yeah, I might not think the same way as you, or I might not even like you, to be honest, depending on, like, we may just butt heads, but I love that because it's challenging ideas, it's challenging thoughts, it's giving a different spin on something. And so when you look at the career and the experience and the background of a lot of shop folk as the company started to grow, is it's like, whoa, you came from where? And, oh, you used to do what? And it's all comes back together, and to create, I think, a very diverse and very widely experienced team that, that is the culture in essence. So.
Exactly. And as you're building this team and evolving your culture, but also like keeping your key principles like intact, obviously that plays well into this motion of part of your area of responsibility around innovation,
Mhm.
right? Because you're doing, hiring people from different walks of life, different backgrounds, different career skill sets, etc. And all that does is fuel your playbook for innovation within all of these pockets that you're now covering.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, during the interview process, specifically with my team that we run, what I try and do is I create a feeling of, not to say what you would expect, but what you could do, and a gauge that I have, and, not right or wrong, but there are some people that kind of get the open road or the vastness, and they get excited around that, and others are like, whoa, like, there's no structure, like, there's no, like, when you ask, like, what does good look like in 3 months, and I'm like, I don't know, you tell me. You get a,
Hmm.
oh, I don't know if that's for me, but I love talking to people that come from banks, because banks are very slow to innovate, very slow to change. And, we interview people coming from banks, and you talk about, like, what the role they're going to be at. They're like, I can change that. I can come, if I have an idea, we can actually do something. And, like, yeah. And they're like, okay, sign me up. Like, I want to be there. But that evolutions piece, that innovation piece, is trying to bring people in with the case of, we trust them. We trust that, we didn't hire you to press a button. We hired you to bring your ideas, bring your motivation, bring your ambition and drive, and go out and build something. And I see my job as removing anything that tries to get in your way, so that you can go out and do that. Right. It's not, and that, I think, creates a high performance team, that team where they feel emotionally invested, which is incredibly important for me to see that, where it's like, yeah, it's not your life, maybe it's your job. Sometimes that identity blurs a little bit, but an emotionally invested employee is one that is, excited to be there, excited to support their peers. They look amongst the group, and they say, not like, what can we do today as a team to do something new or something innovative, not, what's on my to-do list today. So that's what we're trying to build. And I think we're doing quite well so far with it.
Yeah, and I think too, it definitely starts with the interview process. I love that you flip the script back on them and say, like, I don't know, what does 3 months look like? Especially in startup world, I feel like that should be a very common like response from
Mhm.
the interviewer. I feel like even myself, people always ask me like, what is 30, 60, 90 days out? And I'm like, 90 days out, like this is a net new role. You tell, yeah, I've never been bold enough to say you tell me, but I think I'm going to steal that and start using it. Because it's super true. It's like, well, look, nobody knew what I was going to be doing 90 days after I got hired, right? Like they'd never had a director of demand gen before. So like every role that I've hired has been net new. And so it's like you're paving your own path.
Mhm.
Um, and I think it's also like a good like disqualification, right? If you like see people's reaction on the interview and they are like terrified of what you're saying, then you know this is like not the best fit for them.
Mhm. Yeah, no, exactly, exactly. And actually, so what are the other questions I asked too? And this comes back to that emotional connection. Is I asked a question. I'm told it's a hard question. I asked it anyway, no matter what. And it's, what is success for you in 1 year, 5 years, and 10 years? So what would have to be true at those landmarks to look back and say, I'm proud of myself. I'm successful. And some people can't answer that, and that's fine. But the intention is that I want to know, is this, and obviously, is this a right fit for you? But are you going to come here? Like, what is it that you're trying to do? And can we align those different things? Can we say, that this is what you value, and okay, this role, this company, this business is going to help you to get to that point. Because otherwise, your 1 year goal doesn't align with this role. Like, what are you doing, right? Like, why are you here? Or the 5 year goal,
Mhm.
like, what's going to happen here? How do we get you to that? So it's very important to, I think, have people start to think about that. And sometimes it's as simple as, I want to make sure I'm doing something that I'm creating value. Maybe a cop out, but you get that a lot. Other people are like, I want to start a family. I'm like, awesome. Like, this is a great place to do it. Some of them are, I want to start my own business. I love those ones too. But the best answer I got ever was someone we hired fairly recently. And she said her tenure was to be retired. And I was like, absolutely. I'm like, you're
Oh,
hired right now. Absolutely love this. It's like, so this ambition is just, so your plan between now and the next 10 years to be sitting on enough of a base to be like, all right, I'm checking out. She's not very old either. So, that was the kind of spirit where I was like, I love that. I absolutely love that.
I love that. That's super bold, and unexpected, right? I feel like it catches you on your
Mhm.
toes a little bit. If somebody told me that, I'd be like, "Oh, intriguing. Like, can you start tomorrow?" No, I love that. And so as you're hiring this team and understanding like how pivotal and important RevOps is for a company at such magnitude, what would your like recommendation be for people who maybe aren't the size of Shopify and don't have a RevOps team or think they need one but are unsure? Like, what are some of those like critical paths to success for you? And when would you recommend to others that they build and stand up a formalized RevOps structure within their business?
Mhm. Yeah. So I love that you asked that, and this is something I talk for days about. So I'll answer it in two ways. The first one is, actually, I was thinking about this and I wrote down something. It was like 4 points. Where the first one is that when your go to market team starts to scale, and so that change is, if you have 3, 4 sales reps, maybe a couple BDRs or SDRs, maybe a marketer or whatnot, in a perspective where it's like, hey, we think we can scale this, or we know if we add 5 more sales reps, we're gonna, do X. At that point is when, your growth is accelerating. RevOps makes sense because eventually that's going to get to a point where, let's say it's unmanageable, but your scale will be
Mhm.
more efficient with a RevOps function. That's really rocking. Another one is where if folks are spending over 30% of their time doing RevOps and that's not their job, then
Mm,
my belief is that an employee can stretch at least, like, let's say, an additional 30% of what they are expected to do because they naturally want to explore and grow and try new things. But at 30%, someone who's not supposed to be doing that, then there's 60% of a job that will eventually be grown into. So that's the one where I think about that. Um, Stagnation. I think we think about sometimes where, the business is not growing. Well, what do we do? We need to fix our product, or maybe we need to, try and hire new sales reps or whatnot. I would say 6 to 8 months of stagnation where, growth is not happening quickly, or you're kind of doing the same thing over again and it's not working out. You're missing opportunities, you're missing leads, you're not getting right to your base, your customer base. Throw RevOps into that. That's going to put it all on its head
mhm.
and think about it differently. And then the last part is obviously upon a moment of grand growth or investment or funding rounds, that is obviously a great point because, of course, you're probably going to scale at that point. So that makes sense. Um, but I generally say ASAP is when you want RevOps, which leads me to my second point,
Yeah.
which is actually a company that I started. And it's called Jib Strategies. And the intention of that business is actually to give small businesses, medium businesses that have not invested in RevOps or are not willing to, like, fork out a full-time equivalent for that, to get access to that as kind of like, RevOps as a SaaS product, let's say. And so that's the thing that we found is that the premise has been you naturally acquire the technology, you naturally start to adopt the processes way before you have the people to run it and to facilitate it. That's no,
Mhm.
that's natural. That's of course going to happen. The difference though is that if you can get access to that for an hour, a couple hours a week, then you can turn around and say, okay, well, I don't need that until I get to maybe 10 million. But what I can do is I'm setting the right things in place, setting the right things in motion to grow effectively.
Exactly. And at least building a scalable foundation, because I feel like more often than not, people don't invest in rev ops, marketing ops, ops in general, until it's too late. And then you join somebody, you bring somebody into this spider web is almost always what I refer to it as, where it is just like a tangled disaster,
Right.
right? Because it's been like half owned by somebody in marketing, half owned maybe by somebody in sales who is just like tired of dealing with the weird handoff or like total lack thereof. And then maybe even sometimes like a random executive where they're just trying to like fill this gap between the two functions and even between like sales and CS. And there's no one sitting in the middle of that, Venn diagram that I just drew. And all the processes are different, right? It's like marketing went their direction, sales went their direction, CS and support went their direction, and nothing's talking. And then you have like a major, major issue.
Mhm.
And I feel like more often than not, that's how it gets to, right? Which I guess is what you're
Absolutely.
finding, which is why you started this business on the side.
Yeah, we
Um,
we call it the Frankenstein system,
oh,
because
that's
what
good.
ends up happening, and I've seen so many Salesforce instances, for example, where you go into that and it's just straight up as a Frankenstein. I say, what am I looking at here? Like what's actually happened? But you said a great point about foundation, and that I want to touch on that because when I first started doing this, I started talking about you want something that is scalable. You want to build a scalable foundation. And I've stopped using the term scale. And I don't know where I've read that. I don't know if it's a book or something. I saw it not too long ago, but the sense is like stop trying to be scalable from the beginning. And the perspective had
Mm,
been is that if you do things that are scalable, you won't often do the right thing at the right time. And so in this case, it's actually scalable is, yeah, this solution we're going to outgrow me, or this thing that we're doing, it's going to, we're going to get rid of it with the intention to do something different. So that doesn't have to be scalable. The foundation, though, a strong foundation allows you to dump things and toss things out and add new different things. And that foundation is often on a data perspective or on a overarching approach perspective. And so that's one of the things to do when we build Salesforce or we build, revenue systems for businesses. The perspective is that we're going to set you up with everything that you need to not have to go back and completely rethink everything from the ground up. And that what we then say is footnotes kill funnel. And every time you have to
mm,
change the way that you think about a lead, the way that you report, the way that you do everything, you created a footnote where, oh, we've only been doing this for about 6 months. So we only been doing this for about 5 months. Well, show me the year over year growth. Well, that data back there is a little, so like, that's all it's like investor 101 in this case where you're like, okay, like I've probably seen this a million times, but imagine you go into a place where the business is like, yes, we've kept consistency across the board, despite the fact we've changed how we do it, but the data and the foundation is the same and it's designed for growth.
yeah. No, I love that. I'll take a scalable foundation out of my vocabulary because I mean, I agree. I think it's like scalable for that moment in time, right? And I feel
Mhm.
like I say like phase of growth a lot in my day to day because I'm like, in this phase of growth, this is like what's going to be really important for us. However, this next phase of growth, we should think like this or do like this. And if we could keep some type of that foundation again, but the footnotes thing as well, I think is a great point because even us, like in our Google Analytics account, it's like footnotes, right? This thing happened on this day. Oh, we changed, we shipped strategies on this day and we have just like annotations for like everything so that we can try
Mhm.
and validate or dismiss like dips or inflations in traffic. And that same sentiment like dissolves to your entire business.
Mhm.
It's just not maybe as trackable as GA annotations.
Yeah.
Um, but no, it's all good points, and I think these are good things for like the audience to take away and think about how this affects their org or how they could change some of these things that are maybe already happening for their business. With the few minutes that we have left, I want to dive into this, and I don't know if you're going to have enough time to cover it in as much depth as you want, but it's interesting enough. When we were chatting before this interview and discussing potential topics to talk about, you talked about having a deep passion for psychographics and measuring the right metrics.
Mhm.
I feel like we just touched on data a little bit, but I've never heard anybody say that they have a passion for psychographics. So I feel like you should maybe
Sure.
elaborate just a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah. So I think it stems back to a conversation that I'm having almost every day, and it irritates me to no end. But it's about conversion rates, and
Mhm.
the industry, the businesses, everything are very focused on, well, how do I optimize my conversion rate from MQL to SAL, or SAL to SQL, or how do I fix my win rate? And the difficulty that I have about those things is that I'm going to throw two principles out and then dive into specific the better solution. The first one is Goodhart's law, and the concept is that if a measure becomes the goal, it ceases to be a good measure. And so in this case, is that yeah, I can make the win rate better. I just put less things in the pipe that are, or I drop my initial conversion rate, so I'm super qualified leads. But what ends up happening is
Mhm.
you start missing things there. That leads to the second point, which is the multi-arm bandit. The multi-arm bandit concept is that you have to find this balance between exploitation and exploration. And what I mean by that is you say you optimize, optimize, optimize. We're like, yeah, we know if we talk to this particular customer, they're a great fit and we're going to close them. So we're just going to target that really great customer. What ends up happening is that if you don't target the customer that you're not sure about, the customer that's not a perfect fit, you don't find out why they're not a perfect fit. You don't see if there's a value there. You don't innovate your business for that. And then you don't actually grow. And so that multi-arm bandit concept is the actual optimal path is not through exploiting what you know, but it's balancing, exploring what you don't. And then from the learnings of that, continuing to exploit what you now learned. And so to do that,
Yep.
fixing conversion rates or being like, yeah, this piece converts at a higher rate, which is going to produce more QLs. Sure, if you look at the numbers, great, that's fine. But what it doesn't tell you is, why is the person there? What is their
Mhm.
path to interacting? What do they feel when they get on the phone? And what, you know, how should we communicate with them? And so on the psychographics perspective is like, because I think in CMSs now you're starting to see this a little bit more, but they converted on this particular piece of content and therefore they must care about this. But I want to know is like, how long did they spend there, and what was their path, and what type of questions can we assume that they were asking? Can we get our chatbot to just ask a random question when it pops up? They're on this page like, hey, are you, like, for us with the Shopify Fulfillment Network, for example, they may be on there, they're looking at a piece that says when to switch from self-fulfilling to third-party logistics. We could make an assumption that at that point maybe they're growing, right? But then the chat pop up and says like, how much growth have you had over the year? And then it's like, oh, like 10%, 50%, 100%. From there, you start to understand, oh, the person is getting hammered. Maybe they've gone viral. They're getting hammered with product requests or shipment requests, and they're drowning. Or maybe it's like, oh, they're having steady growth, so this will be a slower
Mhm.
buying process. All those things. So psychographics for me is that forget everything. Let's focus on the human, the actual human that is there. Like, because businesses, they don't actually buy. It's the person. The person buys. How do I get inside their hearts and minds? How do I get
Mhm.
inside that feeling? And then you have to put in measures to actually measure those psychographics. Capture it from your sales team. What are the salespeople carrying? They write a text note. But what about, like, is this person very aggressive in the negotiation? Is this person someone who's a low risk taker? Is this grabbing those things then allow you to build better marketing
Mhm.
content, allow you to do more compelling sales. And then the best part after is once you close the deal, you have a profile on this person. You can reduce churn from that because you can then understand, how should I communicate with this person? And open text boxes from sales teams and not capturing in marketing doesn't do that.
Mhm.
So I think it happens through the entire process, and that is that major focus. So I haven't
Yeah.
quite cracked the secret on that yet, but it's a passion of mine now to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I think too, like getting stuck in exploitation is maybe more common than not. Because I feel like even us to a certain degree, as we were scaling and ramping very quickly, we were like, these are our target accounts because they fit XYZ. However, in that, we noticed exactly what you're saying. So, something that's tactical that we've started doing that maybe others listening could implement for themselves as well is we have a team of trailblazers internally where it's like that is their comp, that's what they're measured on. It's anything other than what we've been doing, right?
Mhm.
So they like go out and do their own like quick analysis, market understanding, etc., and stand it up, right? And just like do the polar opposite of what it is that we've always been doing, and just try new markets or new verticals, new understandings of people, titles, like anything that we can get in front of the polar opposite of what we've been doing. And it's actually starting to work really well. We've stood that up, I guess, a quarter or so ago. So we're still fairly in infancy stages as far as like scaling it. But it was like a passion project from our sales leader where he just, hey, we've been going after the same types of people, the same accounts, the same companies, etc. We need to try something different. And it's working really well. So now we're standing up a marketing arm to like help because it's been purely outbound to this point. So now we're going to start to try and generate some inbound interest as well on the trailblazing accounts that those teams have been going after. So that's something maybe smaller and tactical that listeners could stand up or consider implementing something like that in their org. But I think it's a great point.
And that's absolutely, that's so true. Like I love that you guys are doing that, but I think the kind of thinking here is that, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Like go close a bad deal. Like just go close a bad deal. See what happens. And from that perspective, it is, you don't know what you don't know. So go out and learn and then you'll be better for it.
Exactly. You'll be better for it. Last question before we hop off this call is, what is something that you've read, listened to their podcast, you follow them on LinkedIn, etc., that others you think would find value from doing the same?
Put me on spot on this one.
Sorry. I like to ask ad hoc and not warn people because then you get like a good, genuine response.
Yeah. Well, I would say, that sounds the cop out. I mean, if you're not following Adam Grant, for example, you should. I'm a little biased. I come from a psychology background, and I always want to be an organizational psychologist. So I kind of am infatuated with that whole career line. But there's a lot of really good things there, and I think for me, an objective that I've had here is to see the human in the people around us. It's very easy to get, oh, they're in my way, or they're not very smart, or they're not doing everything. But you stop and realize, they have parents, they have children, they have loved ones, they are in this crazy world on their own. And the best thing that you can do then is show up and see that human and interact with that human. And I find a lot of stuff that Adam Grant pops out is exceptionally really good about, again, maybe not being an asshole and trying to get the most out of not just yourself, but the team around you. So that's probably what I would say for that one.
Yeah, not a cop out at all. Adam Grant is brilliant, and none of my guests have mentioned him yet, so it's good.
All right.
Not new. We'll take it. Awesome. Well, thank you again so much for coming on. If anybody needs to keep up with you or wants to know more about what you're doing at Shopify,
LinkedIn is the way to go.
Beautiful. Find Craig on LinkedIn. We'll link it in the show notes as well. Thanks so much, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you.